Aloha, listeners and viewers. Welcome to Intermission, a conversation series between artists. Intermission is the Hawaii Chamber Music Festival's exclusive online channel with Broadcast Hawaii. I'm your host, festival founder Chris Yick, and today we have special guest Mr. Pedja Muzijevic with us. Aloha, Pedja, how are you doing?
Aloha, great. Aloha.
For those of you who don't know, Pedja and I crossed paths in Mr. McDuffie's entrepreneurship class last year when he came to visit in Macon. And what ended up being a very insightful class turned out to be a very long conversation because afterwards I drove him to the airport because we were both flying out the same day. And in that conversation, we talked a lot about music entrepreneurship. But since then, I guess things are, stopped for now, right? With quarantine. I mean, how has quarantine been for you right now, Peja?
Well, first of all, I was very happy to be in Macon in the class, and I really, really enjoyed our chat on the way to the
Yeah.
airport. That was mutual. It's all of our lives are on one hand on pause.
Hmm.
The other hand, I have to acknowledge that I have my apartment, which I love. I have food.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I I go out to go grocery shopping. I go for a bike ride. Uh,
Sure.
Many ways I'm privileged. And it's so interesting. I've spent so much of my professional life questioning concert as a format, questioning
Hmm.
every programming, presentation, where it happens, when it happens, how long it is it formal, is it informal, this and that. And I never questioned the presence of the audience.
Hmm.
And so that
Absolutely.
really hit me that, we can't really be in the same room. So
Hmm.
it ended up being a lot of thinking for me. In a funny way, I feel like I work more than before, though I'm
Yeah,
staying
definitely.
unusual. I haven't been anywhere since March 14th. I dislike it. It's kind of, I mean, I miss being places, but I don't miss traveling.
Sure, sure, sure.
It's been interesting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, from what I've gathered, I mean, you're in New York City right now, the big epicenter of this pandemic, but you seem to be like doing a lot of non-music things. From what I've gathered from your social medias, you're doing a lot of cooking, a lot of gourmet meals, right?
Well, I love cooking, and if you're going to eat, you should eat as well as you can. I just came back from farmers market an hour ago with some lovely fresh local greens. We've had kind of a long winter, and so we
Hmm.
just started to get greens, local greens. And I saw first strawberries today, and I
Hmm.
got some like clams and some scallops and some gray sole. So
Yeah.
uh, we have great. I mean, I'm fortunate that I live on an island. Manhattan is an island, so we get great seafood.
Sure.
And we're close to farms in New Jersey and Long Island. So yeah, I do love to cook. It's a great passion.
So also during this pandemic, I mean, you like you said from March 14th, what have you been bummed about? Like upcoming concerts? What kind of cancellations have you faced from your side?
Oh well, everything's gotten canceled. What I really got and bummed about is not being able to be with friends. I mean,
Sure.
first and foremost,
Yeah.
uh, as you well know, music is a very glorious excuse to be together.
Absolutely.
Well, right now I would have been in Charleston at the Photo Festival, which is a festival I've gone to for 13, 14 years.
Sure, sure.
Musicians who go there are some of my closest and dearest friends, and it's a real camaraderie that we have there. We play 33 concerts in 2.5 weeks,
Hmm.
and so
Wow.
it's kind of a boot camp, but really, really an amazing high to be together and to play together.
Yeah.
Full an incredible audience. We play actually one of the oldest theater in the United States, Dock Street
Oh,
Theater.
wow.
There's 500 seats. Most of it is sold out. And Charleston is a city that becomes a festival, so I'll ride my bike and people will use
Hmm.
cars. Great concert this morning, exciting place to be. And over the years that I've gone there, I've grown to really love a lot of people there who are very dear friends. So I miss being with them. So that really, it's really started to hit me what's not happening. For a while, I was just kind of an automatic pilot, and I did
For sure.
streaming concerts. I was busy with that. I was busy learning new tricks. But and then I am involved in this amazing summer season at Tippet Rise in Montana, Tippet Rise Arts
Yeah.
Center advisor. So we also canceled the whole season. That's 23
Hmm.
concerts. I was involved in booking and programming, and
Oh,
now I'm involved
wow.
rebooking these artists that don't really. So it's you know, but you know, again, well, I am very focused to think about what we have and not about what we don't have.
Sure. Well, during this time, have you realized that maybe like this is a good break for musicians as a whole, like a good time to really just step back and reflect on, wow, now I can spend more time with my family. Now I can do projects that I never thought I could do because I was so busy. I mean, or just keeping that motivation as an artist. How have you coped with all that? Do you feel the same way as well, or?
Well, I do, and I also it's a great time to really reevaluate how we do what we do. You know, I mean,
Sure.
music, there's no doubt music will survive, but I think this is a great moment to really look at the essentials and what are the essentials of sharing music and what are not, what are just conventions. It's a great because it will be a restart, and it will be painful because obviously we have to make baby steps about being together and all of that. None of it is going to magically going to go away. I don't think. I'm very available for miracles, but they usually don't happen. So, I think, but yes, I was immediately asked to stream a concert from my apartment. I was supposed to play recital 90 seconds per beat live, and they asked me to stream. I have never owned a camera in my life. For the first phone was when I got my first iPhone. And actually, I think looking back, there were probably first two iPhones I never even clicked on the camera. It's just not an interest of mine.
Sure.
So I at first, well, I didn't say no, but I thought I would say no. And then I realized as things got canceled one after another, that unless I do this, there would be sort of nothing to do.
Sure.
This was important just to keep me somewhat sane. So I said yes. On social media, what kind of microphone to get. So, people vote. I was, that sort of honed in on one type. So I got that.
Yeah.
And then practicing, I shot every day for like 11 days. The program. First, I changed the program somewhat. I modified it. And then I set out to kind of make a little film, if you will, in which I treated camera as an audience member. So wow. I said, I move you to another seat, and I took the camera and I placed it somewhere. So that's I did awesome. That, it's a highly imperfect situation. It's not a high-end cast from some fancy hall on a 200,000 piano. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go for the strength of this. And the strength of this is intimacy, and you are welcome to my home, and this is my home, and this is I have. So I took, so that interested me. Like in any programming, I wanted to take kind of a different take on it.
Sure. And let's dive into all of this, because you mentioned how this has been a time to really evaluate just how we do things. And a big part of our conversation last year, and for those of you who don't know, Pedja is one of the most innovative music entrepreneurs out there. He has I think he mentioned stuff before in the past, like, he finds a way to get office workers to come to New York concerts after days worth of work, 1 hour, no intermission, have a cocktail, and then go home. But what has been your innovative approach? Like all these years as a pianist, obviously there's the artistic integrity and there's the intimacy of just engaging your audience, but what has been like your method or these creative, innovative ways? Like what is your thought process behind how you program these kind of things?
Well, my starting point is that we don't live in a vacuum. We are a service for somebody else.
Sure.
And at the highest level, we provide service, we provide product, we provide content.
Sure.
So I look at it at a very basic level. Why would somebody? I assume you're speaking of pre-COVID or in general, not just.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
My thought process is that what would make somebody leaving an office at whatever 5:30 or 6 o'clock decide I want to do something tonight, and then if they say I want to do something tonight, what is the most user-friendly experience I can provide? So, for that, you need to kind of, obviously we're not all the same and one size never fits all. But if we want miraculous, 35 to 55 active people, they have a lot of things to do, but they are interested in experiences. We know that. We see it everywhere. We see it in bars, we see it in movies, these are not.
Absolutely.
So I set out to create something that I thought would be an ideal product for them, which is an hour long with no intermission. So I find it always better experience to eat after an event, because otherwise you get sleepy. So I like a concert to start a little on the early side, maybe at 7 or 7:30, so you could be out by 9 o'clock you could be sitting in a restaurant, and by 10:30 you could be home.
Sure.
So me, like on the work day, that's, you know, more likely to get the attention of somebody who leads a busy life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you know, that's one. I mean, there are obviously many recipes, but that was the one that I was.
Sure. Well, in the aspects of the repertoire choosing, then, for an hour long, I mean, classical music for the most part, like a piece could easily just be one concert, right? I mean, how do you start
We had
going by
one.
themes, or do you go by like?
To me, it's an experience. For instance, one concert we had was just a Schubert attempt, and that's all it was. I mean, Schubert is an experience. Of course, it's a song, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's a multi-movement piece. It stands on its own. I don't need anything else with it.
Sure.
It's an hour long. You can take then all the repeats, and you can just have a good time. And we presented it with a beverage and with the ability to refresh your beverage between movement. Not every movement, but a group of movements. So there was a bit of a kind of relaxation for the audience alike. And you want to go also as close as you can to the original thought, original setting of the composer. That's certainly a piece that was not meant in a stodgy, formal information. It's a basic, almost outdoors piece.
Sure.
So stuff like that. And but sometimes I create a larger unit from little things. Depends. Yeah.
Wow. So I guess the question is, you know, you were doing all these innovative niche things that really just drew people in, but how do you think it'll look in this post-COVID world? I mean, do you think more people are going to finally realize, like, the way that you've approached concert making, this is the way to go? We just have to figure out how to bring in people, or do we have to go back to our traditional ways and then think of some ways to get creative?
Well, I certainly think there's no one way. I think there will always be a high-end, you know, A-list formal concert, and that's a beautiful thing. Just like every so often you will go to a tasting menu in a really great Michelin star restaurant, but that's not what you're going to go 3 times a week. And I'm interested in providing content and product that's available on high quality or a high level on every level of experience. So in other words, sometimes it's just a Wednesday burger, and sometimes it's a tasting menu. So I feel like my issue with presenting classical music more than anything was that everybody was trying to fit themselves into that A-list formal experience. I have nothing against it. I think not everybody should go there. So look, nobody knows, but on one hand, you know, maybe in 6 months from now, I mean, the amazing thing about humankind is that we are resilient, and who knows, in 6 months we may like perk up and pretend this never happened. Who knows? That's one option. The other option that is certainly crossing my mind is concert for one. There's no reason you couldn't do like a 25 minute program that's for one, and have a run for like a week in one space, have 4 shows a day for one.
Wow.
You know, for one audience.
Yeah, that sounds really intimate.
Something that's what's interesting to me is that we don't really have, I'll speak now about New York, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate for most of the country. We don't have any centralized listings. We all rely on email lists and, you know, word of mouth and social media and this and that. But because most of our concerts happen once, or in orchestra cases, maybe 3 times, we never have enough time to get the word of mouth going on, like, let's say, a theater run or a dance run, you know, a theater run which may go on for 9 months. So you can go to a bar and say, oh, you got to see Peter, Paul, and Mary. But if you, let's say you go along with this idea of concert for one, and you do it for a week, you actually have an opportunity for the word of mouth to work. And it may not work, I have no idea, but we've never tried it.
Sure.
So I think of experiences that are, because there's no doubt in my mind that the spaces will slowly open, but there's also no doubt in my mind that people not going to run to sit next to each other in a 1,000-seat home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, bent it. So anyway,
Well,
immediate thought, my mind.
earlier you mentioned a lot about, food, like burgers and music. Do you think in some ways there's this sort of undiscovered parallel between cuisine and music? Because some people have told me like, oh, like, music is like like nutrition, it's like nourishment for our ears kind of thing. Do you kind of see that as a big
Well,
thing for music?
I'm more. There's no doubt that we get high on music, or many are. It's food for soul. I mean, it's
Sure.
cliches are cliches because they're true usually.
Sure.
What I compare when I talk about food is actually more experience, because the food has become such um, an item in our society, which is, and
Hmm.
it's a path there that I would love to see music follow. There's a
Sure.
path of demanding higher quality food, demanding a better presentation, better experience. We see it all over the country. And it's
Hmm.
not always only connected to an expensive product. I think it kicked every level to kind of perk up. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen it when you travel, and
Sure. Sure.
now been, let's say, going to festivals and places for some of them 20, 25 years. And you see it even in the basic grocery store, how what you can find there is actually on a higher level. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. How can we replicate that in music? That the market actually, it's a kind of a dialogue. Creative chefs and restaurants led the way, but then the market followed, and people said, "Well, I don't want that prepackaged, whatever processed food. I want something
Sure.
fresh, local."
Sure.
And so that's kind of what interests me. So there, I think there's a correlation.
Wow. So, I mean, now let's dive into your musical journey. I mean, you do all this, not basic, but this very accessible sort of platform of concert, yet you've had your fair share, I mean, of success. Like you've had an incredible performing career. I've seen, you've done Carnegie Hall, you've done recordings. You say you do things in Montana, and then I think you also mentioned last year and on your bios that you run like this big residency at Banff. I mean, like take me through how did your journey as a musician start, and then it leads all the way to all this good stuff, you know what I mean?
So, well, it happened because I walked through every door that opened, and I the greatest advice I think I could give anybody in life: just whatever door opens, go through, because the doors work
Sure.
both ways. Always go out.
Sure.
So I was born in then Yugoslavia, or in what is now Bosnia, and I
Hmm.
came to 1984 to continue my education, first at Curtis Institute and then at Juilliard. And when I graduated from Juilliard in '89, the war in Yugoslavia happened, so I wasn't even able to go home, and I probably wouldn't have gone home anyway.
Sure.
And obviously, or maybe not obviously, I was living hand to mouth, and I didn't really have much, so I took whatever gig came my way.
Hmm.
And in a funny way, I fondly look back on all of those gigs, like accompanying singers and working for Bobby Mann and Jerome from the Juilliard Quartet,
Uh-huh.
and taking any accompanying gig. And then in somewhere in mid 90s, the singer friend of mine said, I was visiting her in Glimmerglass, and she was singing there, and she said, "Oh, I have breakfast with this choreographer, director." And she said, "Well, why don't you come along and can just sit at diner at the bar, and I'll meet with her, and then we'll go out for a show."
Sure.
So
Sure.
I sat at the diner, counter, and they were sitting in a booth. And then, after about an hour, my friend came to me and she said, "Well, I told this woman that you were a friend," and she was like, "Well, that's ridiculous. Just ask them to join us." So I joined them, and this woman is Martha Clark, and she had this idea to do this show with 2 singers and 4 dancers that was kind of early 20th century German expressionism, and they were talking about Berg and Schoenberg, and then I said, "Well, did you ever, have you heard the 7 early songs?" And she was like, "No, but I'll listen to it." And this, and then she said to me, "Well, we'll need a pianist. Do you want to be involved in this?" I was like, "Sure." Technically, my friend couldn't do it because of some scheduling conflicts.
Sure.
He said it was the first theatrical piece I did, which I really designed kind of the weaving of the music, but then ended up
Hmm.
having solo piano music by Bach and Schumann, and then music by Weber and Schoenberg and Berg. And I was kind of fascinated by a whole other art form that happened out of it. That was both, it was kind of really music theater, but not in a Broadway sense. And I was very, very taken by this. And then through one of the dancers' work, Rob Besser, I met Mikhail Baryshnikov, and then I ended up touring with Vladimir Dance Project. And then when Mikhail Baryshnikov decided to build this art center in New York, I was involved in it, you know, sort of by sort of default, because we were good friends. And so when we built the center, Misha said, you know, you should do a concert here. And I thought, well, this is my concert, sort of 21st century version of a salon. And I pitched that idea, and so it was so interesting, you know. The center opened. We didn't even have like a certificate of occupancy. I mean, it was literally going on. And we at that time shared the building. We have half of the building that we built. And at that time, the lower part was owned by two Broadway producers, and there was a theater show that was being rehearsed there that was going to open the building. And it was with Ethan Hawke and Parker Posey and Wallace Shawn, and so they would see us sort of go in and out, and there was Benjamin Milke, who's now the head of Los Angeles Dance Project, and Azure Barton, who's also a noted choreographer. They were rehearsing in two different spots. And she said to me, "Why don't you invite some musicians and do a little informal concert just for everybody to hang out?" We had no chairs. We did get, and so people were literally, you know, lying on the floor and sitting on whatever chairs we dragged out. And Misha invited a few friends. And at the end, this gentleman came to me and he said, "This is such an incredible space for music. You know, you should really do a concert series here." And I said, you know, well, I mean, we have no budget. We just literally like fishing. Well, tell Misha to connect us. This guy turned out to be the CEO of Movado Watch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And knowing nothing, I pitched this idea of an hour-long salon with refreshments, and they said, "We love this idea." And I said, "Well, we could call it Movado Hour." And they said, "Brilliant, we'll sponsor it." And they brought in their catering company, and it was really, so
wow.
It was all things. And then, you know, the series was really a raging success in a sense that, you know, people would line up around the block. It was free. And you know, we had Brentano and St. Lawrence Quartet, and you know, Kalichstein and Gideon Kramer and Philip Glass, and I mean a lot of people. And it was really, and then now it became sort of BSC Salon. We still do a version of it. So it was just one of those. And then, you know, it's a rehearsal studio, so it has grid to hang lights. And so I love lighting, and I got to know that through my experience with dance, because the lighting can really, as we know in any restaurant, can really change an atmosphere. When concert hall, basically, it's like on, off.
Sure.
So invited, you know, at that time, Jennifer Tipton, who was one of the great lighting designer and very early MacArthur Genius Award winner, we asked her to help. She said, "I will do as many of them as I can," because she's a huge music lover. And she said, "But I can't. I will send my Yale students of lighting design to do it." She said, "This is a great exercise. There's barely any rehearsal. I would send them the music. I would say, just design the whole thing any way you like." And it was just such an interesting experience of how people, and it was interesting also from audience perspective, how people would come over and over and say, "Oh, this is not the same space where St. Lawrence Quartet played." I said, "No, it's exactly the same, but it looked entirely different because of the lighting."
Sure. Wow. And then, you know, that, I guess you went from 0 to 60 in the city. Like things worked out nicely.
I went on to, you know, playing, you know, concerts as I do. And then I had been going to Banff Centre in Canada as visiting faculty for some time. And then they had just gotten a 19th century forte piano, and I also dabble in older pianos. And so they asked me if I would design a residency. And sort of, I mean, they were not hinting, but it was like saying, "Well, if you want to do like, you know, Schubert and modern piano and forte piano." And I said, "Well, why don't we do really a residency about what is a concert today?" And so it evolved in this residency that's called Concert in the 21st Century, in which I have about 25 residents. And then I invite mostly it's turned out to be presenters and writers, because I feel like we musicians and presenters don't get to hang out too often when it's not trying to sell or buy something.
Sure.
We have the same goal. That would really also love to involve philanthropists and journalists and from all the aspects of like foundation directors and just
Hmm.
be in a space where we can just talk about our, thoughts and concerns and desires
Sure,
and all.
absolutely.
Anyway, so that's
Wow. So, I mean, I guess the question is, with you doing all of this, like, how do you juggle it all from practicing piano for a concert and then knowing, oh, you have to fly to this place and do this, and then you have to, oh, wait, I have to book these artists from Montana, and then I gotta pick the residence winners for Banff. Like, how do you juggle all of that on day-to-day basis?
I don't know. You do a lot of us juggle, and then Tippet Rise, like latest, been 2 years now, which has been really an incredible. I mean, Tippet Rise is only 4 years old. It would have been our
Sure.
50th, and it's a summer season on a 12,000-acre ranch in Montana, which is
Hmm.
like working cattle ranch, has huge sculptures spread out of the property, and a really, really beautiful, intimate 150-seat concert hall.
Wow.
And so, um, I mean, you get up in the morning and you do whatever is in your pile, just like the rest
Sure,
of
sure,
us.
sure.
I mean, it all gives me so much pleasure, so I don't really think of it as work.
Hmm. Well, I guess another thing is how do you deal with balancing, if you have a big concert coming up, you gotta practice piano, but then you have all these tasks. Like, how do you fit in the time at that point? Or is there a lot of it just mental practice? Or
There is some mental practice. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of works out. I don't know. I don't really put much thought
sure,
into
sure, sure.
it. It is kind of seasonal in a way. So we announced Tippet Rise season in February. So there's that sort
Yeah.
of boot camp from like September to February. Then I can sort of relax for a while, unless it's 2020 when after it was canceled, I had to revisit every artist and decide like, we had so many meetings to figure out like what uh,
Yeah.
do an interview, who is going to record something, or what to do, what somehow to keep some relationship with the artist. Um,
Absolutely.
and also the Banff residency is usually in February. We decided to move it to April in 2021. So usually I deal with applications in the fall. So it's kind of, it kind of falls into different schedule.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the piano performing side. I mean, what are some notable classical concerts that you've done all these years? I mean, I've seen your name in Carnegie Hall. You've done some big name recordings, and there's some like piano concerto for four hands kind of thing where you and someone else is playing on YouTube. I mean, let's dive into that.
Well, so, we pianists are so lucky with such an immense repertoire. So, and I'm
Sure.
curious about. So I go through periods of exploring, different things. And I also am a big fan of juxtaposition. So I try to think of, what, how would certain musical languages speak with each
Hmm.
other,
Hmm.
juxtaposed in the program. So that interests me a lot. Um, so lately I've been very involved in the the family Bach, Johann Sebastian, and mainly Wilhelm Friedman and Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach.
Yeah.
So actually, the last thing I did before the lockdown is I recorded what will eventually be, well, album is the wrong word, but a download of by Johann Sebastian, Wilhelm Friedman, and Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. I recorded actually at Tippet Rise in Montana.
Hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I'll do, from basic things like playing Chopin's Second Concerto with Atlanta Symphony this coming
Hmm.
season to, play cage sonatas and interludes for prepared piano. And, so really wide range. Sometimes it's always in dialogue with the presenter. Sometimes the presenter asks me to do something. Sometimes I pitch an idea and they say, "Oh, but how about if you do that?" So um, it 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 varies. It's
Hmm.
often it's a lot often because we rarely get to do the same thing many times. So I feel like there are months that I will go through it where I feel like every week I'm playing a different program.
Sure.
That's a little tense and a little stressful,
Hmm.
but okay.
But what about the other side where, like, I'm sure pianists Rachmaninoff 2 piano concerto or Tchaikovsky piano concerto or Beethoven Emperor, like, when you have to play those over and over again, maybe not necessarily in the same few weeks or same few months, but just within the length of your career, maybe every other year kind of thing. How do you tackle that on? I mean, is it just bring it back and play it, or do you find new discoveries with repertoire every time?
Well, I think, I think we all eventually, or maybe I'll speak for myself, it's definitely a selection problem, a selection process. If I can't find something that interests me, then I stop playing.
Sure.
I mean, that's really, there are a lot of things I don't play that I've played
Hmm.
once. I thought, oh, God, that was fun, and I'm happy to hear it, but I don't really need to play it again. I don't feel like I have anything to say about it, and so there are things that, and it's very liberating when you feel like that. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, it's fine, it's a great piece, but I don't know. Play. So yeah, I think definitely there are pieces that I've played for many years that I still. It's not different. I mean, we are same people, but we are different versions of same people. We are on the same
Sure.
path. Without,
Sure.
I think at different times of our life, we are differently comfortable with other parts of our being.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't think any of it is new. I think all of it's always been there, but
Yeah.
different, you know. And I think that's normal. There's no reason any of us should skip any of these things. I mean, puberty is annoying, but you need to go through it.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's annoying, of course, only in hindsight.
Sure, 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 sure.
so, so there's that. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I still really love music. I love to play it, and I really love to listen to music also. So
Sure.
I don't have any issues with that. I don't get tired of it in that sense.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, now let's dive into another topic. I mean, you do all this innovation, entrepreneurship, performing. Now, what about the educational side? Like how what has your experience been in teaching, or what are your thoughts on teaching music education in general?
I've my teaching has mostly been sort of coaching older, younger musicians. In other words, mostly people out of school.
Sure.
I've done relatively little actual piano teaching, and
Hmm.
when I do it, it's fun. It's really fun to see somebody, you know, play really well, and try to see what they're trying to say and try to help them say it better.
Hmm.
Uh, what I do notice is an incredible um, shifts in that. I feel like every generation, maybe every 2 generations, I feel like what I played in college now people play in high school, and there's this sort
Hmm.
of I feel like there's nothing that, let's say, college students, let's say in piano, cannot play.
Hmm.
So I've often wondered whether on college level it would be useful when you're dealing with that level of playing to kind of send people around and have pianists play for singers and singers sing for
Sure.
violinists, and kind of shake it up and get like a real fresh outlook of somebody who's not burdened by what is difficult, like what shift is
Yeah.
difficult, because at the end of the day, nobody really cares.
Yeah.
So I do wonder whether that's a space that could be occupied a little more. And I see definitely thawing of this. In my time, there were these camps of teachers. You did
Hmm.
not play for this teacher. I see
Yeah.
that that's going away, and I see even studios that are shared like 2 or 3 professors sharing students, which I think is
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
a fresh. I think it's so healthy for young artists to find out as quickly as possible that there's no one way, and
Sure.
that is why we play one piece over and over, because there is no one way. So if people are often fall into a trap, and it's okay to say, oh well, the other teacher told me the exactly opposite. Yeah, that was valid on Wednesday, and maybe you play
Hmm.
slightly. So I think that's such a valid and interesting lesson that, yeah, different days, different observations. So, but I don't have. I do what I would like to see in general. Well, let me put it differently. I see more amateur playing today than maybe 20 years ago, which I think is really fantastic,
Hmm.
because I think in so many ways we need more ticket buyers than quote unquote professionals.
Sure.
So I think the amateur playing also has such a great impact on professional players, because amateurs play only for love and no desires to, and no burdens of making a living at it. And I think they bring a freshness and a freshness of thought, and they also bring a possible path if a musician can make a living, that you can still be a happy citizen,
Definitely.
but you can still love and enjoy and even partake in music. And I think that's very, because for so long, if you didn't make music, and especially for a while, it was that, dogmatic that it didn't make a music only in a certain way, on a certain level, that you were a failure. And that was just so unhealthy.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
somebody, I don't know, there's some study floating around about how few history majors, work in history, and how in music it's looked down upon. It's just like, why?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
But I honestly, I don't do that much in teaching in that sense.
sure. Well, let's dive right into what you just touched on. I mean, I think you have a good point where maybe like in 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the idea of being a musician was, if you have to get strict conservatory training, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't land some sort of prestigious title, orchestra job, whatever, then you were seen upon as someone who wasn't authentic. But it seems like in the last 10 to 15 years, we're seeing like musicians from all kinds of majors. We're talking about people who are like going to MIT or going to Harvard, who are still heavily involved in music, but we also see like some of the orchestra jobs that are being won weren't even by music majors. Like it's incredible, don't you think? Do you think like what are your thoughts on just is that slowly helping us break the ice and making music just more accessible to society as a whole?
Well, I hear similar reports from other fields. I hear from my friends from finance that
Sure.
they rather film major than an MBA major, because they want somebody with a wider outlook. They want somebody with an unorthodox thinking.
Sure.
So I think it's not dissimilar here. Also, there's a fresh air that comes from somebody who was a math major at MIT and then continued his or her passion with cello and went to, got a graduate degree at Yale. And
Sure.
then, they bring a different kind of experience in their playing. I mean, there's no doubt that that reflects in their playing.
Sure.
So I think I'm also a huge believer that trends happen for a reason, and one should respect and admire trends. In
Sure.
other words, so you sort of embrace it, and then you think, what could I gain from this? Well, how can I get on this train?
Hmm.
So I think there's a reason for that. Starting from Yo-Yo Ma downwards, of people who went to Harvard. I
Sure.
mean, he a pioneer in that sense. After him, let's say already in my generation and some of the younger generation, there was a number of people who went to university, went to a conservatory.
Sure.
So I think it's fantastic. I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess another idea is, with music being so prominent in some sense, this is a very half glass full situation for the profession. But how do you think music can contribute to society in the sense of all the social issues we have? Because I think a big thing that actually stuck with me last year was you always said, instead of asking what society can do for musicians, what can musicians do for society? How do you think we, as musicians or as artists, can approach this?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to open the doors to the auditorium to everybody.
Sure.
From basic things like ticket prices, marketing, and really, really welcoming people. We have to knock down these conventions of behavior in a hall. We have to encourage
Hmm.
people to behave naturally, and when they feel like acknowledging something, all the
Hmm.
better. It's. I mean, when you flip the other thing and see how, let's say, rap music got everywhere, I want that to happen to classical music in every
Sure.
other direction. There's no need. In other words, there's no reason, if rap music could tickle the imagination of the whole world of every shade of color. There's no reason classical music couldn't do the same, because it has done that through cartoons, through commercials, through Hollywood films. People
Sure,
have been
sure, absolutely.
knowing it without having any idea that that's classical music.
Yeah.
So to me, um, I do think the auditorium issue is huge. How do we
Hmm.
welcome people? And so, and of course that then if you go to a concert, then you're more likely to have your kids start playing an instrument. And this is not so your kid will become the next superstar, but it's just another language, just like somebody plays a basketball. It's just another thing. You
Sure,
want them
sure,
are you still
sure,
play.
sure, sure.
So to me, it's, you know, it's so interesting how to um, make something available, something that's not a mass product, because we're not a mass product. But many things are not mass product. There's a fine line that you know, luxury has become such a dirty word, but I think luxury has nothing to do actually with the amount of money. Luxury is something you treat yourself, you decide, I want that chewing gum. It's nothing to do with how much the chewing gum is, or if it's an Hermes coat, or it doesn't really matter what
Sure,
it is.
sure.
It's something you decide. And so how do we become that thing where people say, I want to go to a concert because I feel like it and I miss. And so, but I think from our perspective, the main thing is to make everybody welcome. I think there's been a huge problem with conventions of behavior of music, and we have to convey to our passionate uh, audience base whom we love that they think of it in one way, but there's nothing wrong with thinking of it in another way and expressing your delight. That, and also, and maybe one way of conveying that is that that was historically accurate. I mean, we know that people
Sure.
planned movements in the 18th century because we have reports from London how Haydn's scherzo had to be repeated because it was such a huge success, and yet the
Sure.
scherzo movement. So it's clearly not yet. I think there is a way, perhaps, to convey something like that from the stage where you don't embarrass your existing audience, and yet you open the door to accepting the behavior of newcomers whom we desperately need. Because there is an issue. You don't want to offend your existing audience either. I mean, and there's no reason.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. We love them. So that's, I think that to me leads to diversity, because if you go somewhere where you feel unwelcome, you're not going to come back. That's just
Sure.
real.
If you don't fit in the place or the ambiance.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, you bring up an interesting point about, you know, Hollywood, cartoons, all these things keeping classical music very relevant. In some ways, do you think it's classical music, our profession in general, is something that people actually know quite a bit about, but they just don't know that they know a lot about? Because there are some experiences, like even my friend here recently, he was just playing Phantom of the Opera, and he was like, "Oh, I really like this kind of soundtrack." I'm like, "You do realize classical musicians play that all the time, right?" And he was like, "Oh, that's super cool." And then we talked about movie music, and I think it's a matter of people, if they realize they know about it, then they become so interested and so engaged. I'm not sure if you feel the same way about how, like, people who not necessarily are knowledgeable but they actually like it. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
Absolutely. I mean, you're 100% right. And I've actually started to wonder whether we should just call ourselves musicians and not classical musicians, because I don't
sure,
know that I'm not even sure that defines anything. So if you're speaking of opera, if you play Johann Strauss Fledermaus or Merry Widow, those were pop. That was pop music. You know, those were
sure,
Broadway shows at the time. So is that classical music? Who cares? I
sure,
equally think that the vision of new music and old music is very old-fashioned to me. I just want music. I don't care. And you
absolutely,
know, to be stickler for detail, we performers always play music from the past. It may be last week or 300 years ago, but we need something that's from the past in order to play. It has to be finished.
sure,
So
sure, sure,
I think there are a lot of those things where we could subtly change the thinking and just say it's a concert. What kind of
sure.
concert? Various music from 18th and 19th century or 19th and 20th. And you know what I mean? You can set the scene in a way that doesn't really say classical. because
Hmm.
it didn't say so in the cartoon either, right? Nobody
Yeah,
said,
absolutely.
coming up warning, 5-minute warning, classical music. So, I think, I mean, all these things sound like such small details, but I think,
Sure.
why not?
Well, on the other side, let me ask you this: like, do you think it is us as musicians as a duty to really just, I don't know if be proud is the right word, but really just like talk about what we do? Because a lot of like my musician friends in Hawaii, I've seen them, they're posting all over social media how they played for Eminem, the rapper, in his concert in a little stadium. But then the other time you'll see something, oh, just finished like playing Beethoven 9 again for the 10th time. Should musicians have that ability to just own up to what we do? Because I think musicians don't realize how much their voice translates off the stage as well. Like, do you think more of that would help with everything as a whole, or?
I think all of it helps. I mean, I think, look,
Sure.
let's talk about social media. So you're of the generation where you will have, your friend from school who have taken many different paths, but who still know
Sure.
you. So obviously, if they feel close to you and if you share what you do in a way that's not off-putting or
Sure.
exclusive in some way,
Sure.
more likely to come and see you because, hey, that's Chris who I went to grade school with. So, it's like,
Sure.
it's a given.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any need to sort of qualify like Eminem versus Beethoven, whatever. I mean, and frankly, you should post whatever, whatever you're related to.
Sure.
But I do, I do find it interesting. Uh, when you go to a pop, rock, or any concert to observe it as an experience,
Hmm.
how there are no dull moments, there are no down moments. Very often, those people never get off the stage. I think it's an interesting way to look at the art form from and see what can we learn from that.
Sure.
I mean, my little pet peeve is public tuning really necessary? Go hygiene everywhere, and then when you show up on stage, go out and deliver what people paid for.
Sure. Sure.
All those comings and goings, like I when I play now solo recitals, I never leave the stage.
Sure.
The reason I talk or I don't make that as predictable either. Sometimes I don't talk. I mean, I talk at some point, but I don't talk all the time. Um, so I think there's a lot we could learn from that Eminem concert that at first was just a gig to make some money, which is beautiful. Getting paid for what
Sure.
you're doing is a great thing. But I think, and this is kind of what I was getting at when I was, doing just gigs when I got out of school. You should look at everything as something you can learn something from. And there's a reason why 30,000 people are at that concert. There's a reason for that.
Sure. 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 Sure.
Oh, it's interesting to and equally, let's face it, they took a lot from us. I mean, all songs are tonal. Probably could be traced to its melody accompanied. We've been at it for a while.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's slowly wrap things up. I mean, Pedja, you've talked about some incredible discoveries between just society and music and how we should proceed. But what happens from now? I mean, obviously with quarantine, we're currently shut down for now. But are you are you pursuing any new projects? Is there anything that like is going to be coming out, or is there any new revelations you've had during this time that you just want to share?
Well, as I said, I've done two streaming concerts and the third one that will come out in a couple of weeks, and I was just hired to do another one that will be in August. And so
Hmm.
that is a deep learning curve. From the first to the second one, I already learned so much as far as just camera and I was just filming with my iPhone. I didn't even know that they were like settings for camera for different levels of. I really knew
Sure,
nothing. Clicked
sure, sure,
on
sure.
record. So since then, I got a second iPhone. So my second stream, which is still available actually for Spoleto, it's free, uh, has two cameras. So already it was, and shot on a higher level of video quality. So already it's a huge step. So for me,
Mhm.
that's been interesting. I've been interested in sharing some sort of virtual content but I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to go about it.
Sure.
I do think that whatever we do online, we should first in our mind and in everybody else's mind figure out how is that in addition to what we do and not instead of it. I think
Got
that's
it.
an important distinction, but it has to start in our minds. How is this different from a company? And make
Sure.
it. I also think this is a unique opportunity for us to become people in other ways, like this. I mean, and I don't know, maybe your answer would be yes. Question is, if I came to Hawaii to play in your festival, would we ever spend this much time talking? Probably
Well,
not.
I think probably not in like a mass quantity as of right now, but I do think we would definitely be able to converse here and there for sure. But I think yeah, you're right. Like you
I
bring
mean,
up a good point.
for the public.
Oh, yeah, probably not. Probably this would not exist as much.
We would talk. We have
Sure.
talked. And we so, but I just mean like there's a way at this time for us to talk about other aspects of our art form and the presentation to people who are curious, who've been our viewers, who've been our
Sure.
audience. So there's a way to bring them behind the scenes and behind of our thinking, I mean, kind of behind the stage. So that's
Sure.
one positive aspect. How are we going to go? Who knows? But that's why I'm going to wake up tomorrow and find out. I don't know.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, yeah, I think you touched upon a lot of great points in the sense that like this is a good time for people to sort of talk and reflect, but most importantly, I think you also bring up another good point. This has allowed people to really reach out and connect with people maybe they haven't even talked to in a long time.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, I think in some ways this whole quarantine thing, as much tragedy and unfortunate circumstances this has brought, it's been in some ways very good opportunity for us to really grow and just learn new things.
Right.
But I mean, would you agree?
100%. I've also spoken with some people whom I've not spoken to in a long time. I think we all have that experience.
Sure.
And I do think we do spend a lot of time thinking about how do we go about doing what we want to do today and tomorrow. So, I mean, tomorrow we don't know, but today we kind of know.
Sure. Well, listeners and viewers, this has been great with Pedja. As you guys know, if you guys like what you see and like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Broadcast Hawaii. And we'll be having more episodes just like this. And Pedja, is there any final thoughts you want to add?
Well, it's been a pleasure as previously to speak with you. I think you're an amazing mind, an amazing organizer, an amazing thinker. So keep at it, and I know you will.
Thank you.
It's been great. It's been great to chat with you. It's great to see younger generation think in a more complete way about a full experience and not just our sliver of expertise for which we're trained and where we have to start. We have to start.
Sure.
But I think it's great to see you and your classmates from school and elsewhere. I see people who are sort of slowly saying, okay, and what about there and there? Keep looking.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Pedja. I guess I'll see you in New York, and let's bring you out to Hawaii sometime.
Yes, I'll see you in New York soon. I'd love to come to Hawaii. Thank you so much for asking.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Alrighty.
Take care.